Hello and welcome to my From the Air series, the Somme number 3. And in this video we're going to be looking at Serre. On the 1st of July 1916, Serre formed the northernmost part of the attack that opened the Battle of the Somme. And we see 4 small copses, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And this is where the Sheffield pals and the Accrington pals set off to try and capture the village of Serre, which is on this trench map on the far right. Look at the 4 rows of German trenches they had to cross. They never made it, most being killed in no man's land. As we take off now, we're flying north. What was the original 4 copses in the 100 years since has grown into a single large wood, and one end of it is known as Sheffield Wood. In fact, is now owned by the city of Sheffield as a memorial to the Sheffield pals. On the right here, just arrowed, is Luke Copse Cemetery. And we're flying due north over no man's land, and as you can see, the land gently slopes up to the left. Guess where the Germans were? On the high ground to the left. Nearly always, the British in the low ground, Germans taking the high ground. They knew how to pick their defensive positions. This cemetery is Queen's Cemetery and contains the remains of 311 British soldiers, most of them being killed on the 1st of July 1916, and some of them on the next attack to take Serre, which was the 13th of November 1916. In the far distance, right on the horizon, those trees, is Beaumont Hamel and Newfoundland Park, where there was a terrible disaster on the 1st of July that befell the Newfoundland Regiment. We can also see in the middle distance Serre Road number 3, which we're going to move over towards now, and there's a track running from there to the woods, which was the front line. We're still over no man's land, German trenches to the left, and the British trenches following that track that we can just see. In this cemetery, which is Serre Road number 3, the remains of 80 soldiers, and in the distance, Serre Roads number 1 and 2, containing 2,500 and just over 7,000 respectively. I'm going to swing round now and face back towards the north. British front line trenches followed that track down towards what is now a single wood, and running along the front edge of that wood you can still see today the remains of the frontline trenches. The cemetery, Queen's Cemetery in the middle, just over on the right there, is probably as far as virtually any British soldiers advanced on the 1st of July. Notice how the ground drops off to the left into a valley, and just out of sight, and we'll see it in a moment, is Railway Hollow. And this contains 107 remains. We're looking directly up no man's land now. German trenches over on the right. On the high ground, swinging to the north and round to the left. And we can see again Luke Copse Cemetery in the middle. German trenches just there, roughly, where that arrow is. British frontline trenches right along the front edge of this wood. But remember, on the day, it was 4 small copses, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Inside these woods, you can clearly see the shell holes and the outlines of trenches, relatively shallow now by the standards they would have been of the day, after 100 years of erosion. And as we just pan down, we can see Railway Hollow. There's Sheffield Memorial in the woods, and we're just moving forward in the direction the British forces would have advanced. Looking towards the village of Serre in the distance, between Queen's Cemetery there and Serre, 4 rows of German trenches and barbed wire, and around Serre itself it was what was known as a redoubt, that the Germans had completely surrounded it in a row of trenches facing in all directions. Again, we're looking north. moving along slightly behind the British front line. No man's land to the right. Luke Copse Cemetery directly in front of us. What's interesting about this cemetery is that all the gravestones are in a single line facing the direction the British soldiers would have tried to advance on the 1st of July 1916. They left their trenches at 7:30 in the morning, just on the left at the front edge of what is now that wood, and as you can see they advanced maybe 100 yards or so. They didn't get very far. In actual fact, Serre was never taken by assault. The Germans, when they evacuated this area of the front line to retreat to the Hindenburg line in 1917, was when we managed to finally occupy the village. The Germans retook it in March 1918, and again we advanced in September of 18 and finally took it for the last time. But see how the headstones are all down one side, facing the same way towards the German trenches, the direction all these men would have been advancing. At the far end of the cemetery, the cross of sacrifice that you always find in British cemeteries. On the Western Front there's best part of 1,000 British cemeteries, and all credit has to go to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission for maintaining these in such beautiful condition for nearly 100 years now. And long may it remain so. The Powell's battalions were Kitchener's new armies. Men from villages and towns who joined up together were allowed to serve together. This created its own problem when on the 1st of July so many of these battalions were decimated. It meant that some of these communities, like Accrington and Sheffield, they lost so many men, some of them out of single streets. Devastated those communities. My own grandfather was not far from here on the 1st of July. He was very fortunate in that he didn't take part in the initial assault. He was in the reserve forces waiting for the breakthrough to move forward, which didn't come. And he didn't actually go into action until a week or two after the 1st of July with the 5th Battalion, the Royal Warwickshire Regiment. Just going to increase altitude now, look back towards the front lines here. British front lines on the right, as you can just see that arrow. No man's land where the cemetery is. And the German front lines approximately where the wheat field changes direction, running along the slightly high ground there. Village of Serre just coming into view. And there would have been between us and that village 4 rows of trenches. And we can just see in the fields, just there now, what I call a ghost trench. That is the shadow of the German front line trench. Again, swinging round, what we see in the distance now is the entire Somme battlefield, panning from north to south. Village of Serre. This field would have been row upon row of trenches, masses of barbed wire, and of course shell holes everywhere. And we're looking towards Albert now. 18 miles the front line was where the initial assault on the 1st of July, stretching right out in front of us. Just going to increase the altitude a bit to give you a slightly better view. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cemeteries. That's the line of the front line. And also we can just see in the distance there Newfoundland Park and Beaumont Hamel where the arrow is. I hope you've enjoyed this short video. If you'd like to learn more about my travels and visits to the Western Front, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hope you found it interesting. And remember, this is done in the memory of the Sheffield and the Accrington Pals battalions. Thank you for watching.